Hello, everybody. So, today's topic of discussion is hands on activities, manipulatives, centers. And I just wanted to take a moment to go over a few of the different books that I'm pulling the activities from. So, there are three books primarily that the activities are being pulled from, and they're the ones that are larger on the screen. So, music manipulatives, we'll go over some examples from that one first, and then we'll go over some from Purposeful Play, and then the one from the Music Center Handbook. The other two, the Ukulele Explorer book and Recorder Readiness, are also have some very hands-on aspects, but those are not included in this presentation. So, also as you're watching, each book will be displayed up in the corner of the slides, so that as we go, you can see which one I'm pulling from if the things are of interest. Also, the things that we're talking about today are things that you could come up with on your own, even if you do not own these books by Alfred. Of course, I would love it if you would buy one or two or three of my books, but all of these have been developed in my classroom over time, um, just with ideas that came naturally and were made into books later. So, as we go into why we would use hands on learning and games and centers in the music classroom, we can see that kids who are of the elementary age are concrete operational and they are in need of physical activity. And oftentimes we see with our teaching that we might be heavy with one or one or two methods of learning. Maybe we're heavy on visual content or heavy on auditory content, and it becomes kind of neglected to make sure that our kinesthetic kids are getting what they need. And at this age, all kids are kinesthetic kids in order to take um, an abstract concept and turn it into something concrete. In order to make that a thing, we are talking about using physical objects to represent music. And when we do that, often we want to just isolate one musical concept at a time. So maybe we're isolating just rhythm or just pitch or just melodic contour. We're finding ways in which to take those one concepts and then do it multiple different ways, putting it into all the modalities, but especially concentrating on physical objects. I also want to mention when we think about this that all of the major child psychologists who have observed children of this age have noticed that this is a need to build understanding in this way. And so that's why we see manipulatives in math class or, um, ways in which we can actually physically move the music around or create in that way or learn in that way. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Heather. This one is just kind of how you would consider designing some manipulatives. So if you wanted to create your own, or as you're looking at the ones that I have created, then you can kind of think about these three different things as a way in to this topic. And it really doesn't have to be intimidating or something that is difficult to think through. The first thing, of course, that you might consider is which skills or curriculum concepts you want to reinforce with your kids. What are some things that every single year you're having to hit really hard? Is it physical beat? Are you having to hit hard pitch matching. What is it that is so important that you need to hit it over and over and over again? These are the concepts that we might keep learning and keep spiraling our curriculum, but we're also going to come back and revisit all the time. So, those are the ones that I think maybe you should consider even jotting down on a piece of paper, things that you have to hit over and over and over again, and coming up with some fun activities with physical objects to reinforce those concepts. One of my favorite is that my dollar store, my local dollar store, sells little foam hearts. And so when we come back and we reinforce beat over and over and over again, we can pull out the foam hearts and we can either put rhythms on top of them or hit them with our fingers for keeping along with the beat, all kinds of different ideas. So just think of those things that come back over and over again. And then the next number two on the slide says to consider what you have available. So another thing is you don't have to break the bank to teach in this manner. You know, the dollar store, consider borrowing materials from your PE colleagues, um, work with a friend. You can create your own if you're feeling brave. There are lots of different ways to teach in this way without spending a lot of your own money, which I know we do that. And then the third thing is to design something fun that goes with those first two thoughts. So as we go into the next slide, this one is a way in which you can look at some different manipulatives with and some different potential concepts in music or elements of music, depending on what we're looking at here. So this is just kind of a brainstorming chart, and this one actually is in the manipulatives book. These pictures are taken from this book, but you can just kind of consider, what do I have available? I have popsicle sticks. Or, oh, I could easily find counting cubes. I could find ribbon wands. Um, Maybe I already have scarves. So just consider, what do I have and what could I do with it? Form is always a good one to teach with the things that are movement based, like parachutes and scarves and ribbon wands. When we're talking about counting cubes and things like that, it makes natural sense to make it a rhythm thing, or to put your pitch up the side of your popsicle sticks. So there are lots of different ways. We used to do some paper plate dancing, and paper plates could be another one. So these are all just brainstorming ideas for you to check the list on the left, see what manipulatives you have or could easily get, and then devise a plan. All right, so now we're going to go into some actual examples from the book. By the way, this book, Music Manipulatives Workbook, is meant to be open ended, and after each manipulative, there is a brainstorming space for you to write your own ideas, because like I said earlier, these are not, exclusive ideas here for me to just bestow upon you. These are things for you to consider. What do you have, and what could you come up with? So, just some examples here. Popsicle sticks. So I have either rhythm or pitch. So for our popsicle sticks, and I think probably some of you already do this, we lay out one stick for ta, we do three for TT, just build our little stick notation. And then it's a Z for our rest. We can do triple T with our make a frame of a TT and add another one in. So that's how we do it with rhythm. which could either be rhythmic dictation, where a teacher claps, you clap back, and then you try to build whatever it is that I just did, or it could be that the children just build and explore their own rhythm, and then they have to clap it out. It could also be whole class where teacher claps something, they figure it out, and then I build it. Could be one of your steps in the I do, you do, I do, we do, you do situation. So that's the way I approach rhythm for that one. If you're doing pitch, then you could just write your solfege letters of whatever pitch set you're working with. If you're doing pentatonic, then just put your do, re, mi, sol, la, whatever it is that you're doing. And then the kids can move along with it to just move up and down the popsicle stick. So those are two examples, but I'm sure you could come up with more. Also, I want to say that almost all of these manipulatives can be done in whole group, small group, or individual. Um, Especially this popsicle stick thing, so you could have them individually create as well. So the second one we're looking at scarves. I mean, classic scarves, right? This one could be a create. It could be a listen and respond. So classic thing, map out your form of your song, create a scarf movement for each section of the form, involve the children if you want to, or teach it to them and then have them create something of their own later. Uh, Whole group or small group, if you're having them create, I like to use small group for that quite often because it is creative and fun. So they can share their movement compositions with the class. I do have some rules when I do that one. You'll have to think about what your kids need on that front, but I have a rule that they have to stay on their feet for their movements because sometimes they'll want to get a little more creative. But that's scarves. And then we can move on to example 3, unifix cubes. And this one, I actually took the cubes and used a Sharpie marker. We had a bunch of math manipulatives get discarded in our school. And so I was right there at the closet and managed to get a big basket of these counting cubes and just took a Sharpie marker and wrote on each side. Of course, this is single beat subdivision, kind of similar to example number 1, where we don't have many half notes or whole notes, dotted half. All of that I have taken super glue and glued 4 together and wrote your whole note on the first one so that the kids see this is where it occurs on beat 1, but then it lasts all 4. So if you wanted to go beyond single beat subdivision, it does require a little creativity, but it's easy to do. Okay, on to example number 4. So this one's an example for tuneful singing, and the kids love this one as a small group activity or a center. And for this one, what I actually do is I include a list of nursery rhymes that kind of go along with the animals. And you can see that I chose the farm animals because in my classroom in first grade, we do a giant farm unit, and it's all the nursery rhymes hooked together where Mary's Lamb is friends with Tommy Tucker, and they're all interconnected. But what's fun about this one is you can give them a list of nursery rhymes and finger puppets to match, and then tell them they have to create a story with the animals. And every time it comes, but they have to include at least 2 or 3 of these songs when it comes up in the story, when that character comes up in the story. So this one's just a fun way to get them to get over the idea of singing in front of their peers and just creating something fun. I've used this one as a center before. I do have rules that the puppets are not allowed to fight with each other, so you might want to consider that because sometimes that becomes a temptation. But it's a really fun one. Number 5 is our foam cubes. For this one, we roll them like dice. So we've written rhythms on each side of it. Again, it's single beat subdivision. We roll them, we put them together, we clap them. Could also be that you have rhythmic dictation similar to the other activities, or that you allow them to just make a big long string of their cubes and see how well they do. If I have them do a big long string, though, I do like to have them group them in groups of 4. And I do want to make sure that before they do that, that they kind of have a handle on some of the rhythms before we're adding a whole bunch of beats to it. Hula hoops, example 6. This one again, I believe there's some examples of this with Artie Almeida, where you stand into the hula hoop to become the rhythm. So this one I put beat or rhythm because sometimes I'll put 4 hula hoops out and then we march through in the beat just to make sure that our feet can match. And then we'll turn it into 8 and we'll have 4 of one color and 4 of another color so that it just kind of shows in 4/4 time that we're grouping them. And so that's one way to do it, just with beat. Another way to do it is to have the hula hoop represent the beat and then the people represent the rhythm. So they go stand into the hula hoop. One child in a hula hoop would be a ta. 2 children would be a titi. No children, a rest. Triple T. We could get up to ticka ticka, depending on the grade level. But it's again kind of that single beat subdivision. Can I understand that the hula hoop's the beat and we're moving through? Okay. So those are the examples and manipulatives. Another thing I just want to mention one more time is that you definitely should think of your own manipulative stuff. Just go wander around the craft store or the dollar store and see what's available and see what you can think of. All right, here we go with teacher created games. So these are all from Purposeful Play. And in this book, we have a few different types of games. So I'm just giving you the rundown on what is in here, but also kind of how you could think about it. Board games, puzzles, dominoes, dice games, adapted homeroom games, and memory matching card games. So the adapted homeroom games is kind of a cool thing to look into. Uh, if you just Google what's happening in the classroom or go on to Teachers Pay Teachers and you see some cool literacy games that are physically involved and then you just adapt it to musical concepts. That's what some of these games in this book, how they were developed. The memory matching card games, I love doing 2 different colors so that on one color you might have your physical note and on the other color you have your note name. And then they draw one from each color to try to get their match. And they have to actually know the note name in order to get their match. So that's kind of how that was developed. And then if we look at the next slide, this is the chart that is in the front of Purposeful Play. And it's a little bit, tricky, but basically you just look down the side is the name of the game. And across the top is the musical concept we're reinforcing. Lots of music symbols. I hit that really hard in my room. Kerwin hand signs, instruments of the orchestra, treble clef note names, bass clef note names. And don't be thinking that because your kids are older in 4th and 5th, they don't enjoy these things. They really, really still do. So the bass clef stuff in 5th grade, I pull out the manipulatives and the games and we go for it. This is just for your reference for you to think about um, kind of this is actually what's physically in this book, but you could also think about for yourself what kind of game you would want and then what kind of concept you want to reinforce. All right, so now we're going to go into some examples from purposeful play. This first example is one of my favorites. And I think this example might be in the recorder book as well. I can't remember if I put it both places. But there's actually very few of them are in two books, but this one is such a good one. So you have these recorder dice, and you do have to make all of these games in purposeful play. I want to encourage you that it's not as intimidating as it looks, and that you could maybe start with one game to make. We have a watchdog dad program, and it's actually watchdog whoever wants to come program. And I will sometimes leave things for them to cut out up there because when they're not patrolling our school, they will help cut out. We also have some different volunteers who sometimes come in. So please think that you don't have to do all this work yourself, that you could find some sort of creative way, either cutting it out in front of the TV at night if you are doing it yourself, or to volunteer or someone to come help you. But in example number one, so we cut out our rhythm cards. I make each batch their own color. So if I've got a group of kids working on all the green cards, all the blue cards are their own set so that they're easy to sort if they get mixed up. So we've got rhythm cards, we've got a dice. We roll our dice. The dice says for me to play B, and it's got the recorder fingering on the dice. It's got its pitch on the staff and the note name. And then I pick a card, any card, we clap the card, and then we play that on B. And so this is a creative way to build our recorder technique. The dice come in three different levels. So there's a bag ed, and then a bag with CD, high C, high D. So you can kind of tailor it to if you're doing third grade beginners or if you're doing fourth grade more advanced. Okay, example number two. This one, the pizza, is so fun. So this one's our Kerwin hand signs. Pretty simple. You know, this is just lay out your pizza and put your solfege on top so that we can remember, oh, well, the hand sign that goes with this. The pizza game has three different versions. Actually, every game in the book has three different versions. So this one also has a bass clef note version, and I believe it's music symbols version. So you decide what you're teaching at that moment or plan ahead because you have to make it. And then I use baggies to put each batch together. All right, example three. This is a memory match. Again, I do two different colors. One has the actual symbol on it. One has the definition of the symbol on it. So you can't just match symbol for symbol and not know what it means. You have to match the symbol and what it means in order to keep it. In their groups, I like to play about 3 kids per group, but I will let them do 2 or 4. When they get up to 4, I just say, are you going to be well behaved with that many? And if they say yes, then I'll let them have 4. But I do let them in their group help each other with the definitions. If they draw one and they don't know, is this a match? Well, they can discuss as a group. You don't have to personally know for yourself. Okay, next one, example number 4. This one's one of my favorites. So this one has, we have ice cream cones for our instruments of the orchestra. There are also cupcakes and hamburgers for different concepts. But the one that I chose to show you is my favorite because it shows the instrument at the top. the instrument name on the cone, and then the first scoop, the middle part, is information about that instrument. So when you play this game, you would have all of your pieces cut out and in a baggie and mixed up. And then it's their job to lay everything out and figure out how to build each cone so that it matches with the pieces of information that are on the cones. Um, Same thing with hamburgers and cupcakes. All right. Memory match again. Example number 5 is bass clef. We use these bass clef and treble clef memory matches every single year. And I actually used to make these on construction paper and just, you know, laminate them and homemade. But these have printable templates that are easy to cut out and put on cardstock and simple. Just flip one, flip the other, doesn't match. You can, when they first start playing this, and I do, include a cheat sheet. I call it a cheat sheet. It's just the staff with bass clef and all the notes, and then the note name underneath. And the first time or two that they play it, I'll let them use that to as a point of reference. And then we need to get to the point where we've weaned off of that and they can name them on their own. Number 6 is just a jigsaw puzzle. And I like to do instruments of the orchestra centers. So this is one of the ones that I use in my centers, but instruments of the orchestra layout is nice. Also helpful if you've already, kind of taught the families and how they sit on stage, that we notice there's bass clef on one side, treble clef on the other, that they're grouped by instrument type, all of that stuff. You could also, though, make this an exploratory thing before they get more and more information. So I really like that one. Okay, now we're going to go into centers. And centers is one of my favorite things to talk about. I love, 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 love centers. Please don't be intimidated by centers. You can create the groups that the kids are in if you need to, if you have behavioral needs where you need certain kids separated. Um, you could do it randomly. You could allow the kids to choose their groups if you're feeling like they'll make mature decisions. Or sometimes what I will say to them is you can choose your group if you're going to get along. And then we have to brainstorm. I'm finding we have to brainstorm ways in which to be fair, to share. But if we go through those kind of affective things, it's really, really an important thing for our kids to be able to work together in small groups and get a variety of activities in one class period. I usually unite mine by a common theme. So maybe we're doing treble clef centers to review our treble clef note names. Maybe we're doing instruments of the orchestra. Maybe we're doing quite a bit of rhythm or melodic contour. Lots of different themes you could choose. You don't have to do a theme, but those are some ways in which to unify and kind of think of some different activities. So this is how we do it. We divide our class up into 5 or 6 small groups. I prefer 6 because it makes the group smaller. You allow 8 to 10 minutes per activity, and then you choose your curriculum concepts according to what you're teaching and design a variety of modalities and standards. Why do we do it? Because it's small group instruction. There's lots of variety within the centers. It matches the attention span of the children. If they get one that's not their favorite, they only have to do it for 8 to 10 minutes, and then we're on to the next thing. And it allows the kids to do things that you would not be able to do in a whole group setting. So we're thinking about, I have little music makers with the little sheets that you slide under and they can play a melody. Well, I only have 5 of those, so I can't do that in a whole group setting, but I certainly can make it a center. So, for some of those more creative and fun things, singing along with puppets in a small group, make a really nice center. And when you're setting up your centers around your classroom, just think of different little pockets or areas that might be a little more secluded. You're probably going to have to put a couple in the middle, and I used to have a much smaller classroom than I have now. And I still did centers. I just found a way to make them kind of in the corners where they had their own little space. Put if you have two noisy centers out of 6, then put them on opposite ends and then fill in between so that they're not right next to each other. I usually put one of my noisy centers right next to one that's more like, oh, now we're doing kind of a worksheet type thing or something that's a little more internal and quiet. Consider for your listening centers getting one of those boxes that where you plug your headphones into the box and it's an earphone splitter so that not the whole room is listening to the listening station. Just things like that can help it be a lot easier. But please don't be discouraged about that aspect because the kids love centers. Okay, let's go into some examples of things. These are from actually my first book with Alfred, the Music Center Handbook. And it's very simple. We can see our 16 beat heart chart, classic kind of Kodai way to look at rhythm. And then the little single beat subdivision rhythms, you're going to have to determine what level your kids are at. If they're younger, obviously you would only cut out the top 3 rhythms, the TAs, the rest, the TT, or whatever system you're using, maybe Takadimi, whatever you're using, or all the way down to having your T-tickas and tickatees and potentially triplets. So we cut out whatever rhythms we want. We put them in an envelope, glue it down or tape it down to the bottom of the 16 beat heart chart, and then they pull out a rhythm and they can build on their heart chart. I personally like them to build 4 beats at a time and then clap it out and make sure they like it before they go on to the next 4. And then we do kind of go into it a little bit that sometimes a song feels like a song when it has some patterns in it. So that can be a nice little center. And in that center for me, I don't have them working as a group. I have 4 or 5 different heart charts out, and then they work individually. For example 2, Soul Me composition, this one they work as a group, and we put a staff on the floor, and they create their Soul Me composition, and then they try to sing it together. You want to make sure you're at a point where they're pretty independent with pitch. If you're noticing the Soul Me is not sounding like Soul Me, then maybe that's not the best center for them.
Dan,
Number 3 is just a word search. And I was actually really surprised that my students had not done a word search. We pulled this out in 4th grade as instruments of the orchestra because this word search is only orchestral, symphonic orchestral instruments. And they had never done a word search before. I was thinking, what is going on that these kids have never seen this? So we did our word search. I make sure that they circle it because then what we do is after they circle, rather than doing a line, after they circle it, they color in the families of the orchestra. So after we've found all the instruments, then they take yellow, and I think yellow might have been brass or strings, I can't remember. But we would take that yellow and we would do all of the brasses in yellow. Okay, now we've got all the strings in pink, or being able to not just find the instrument, but uh, then be able to know the family. This is not going to be done in 8 to 10 minutes. They are going to get a good start on it. They're going to work together. And then what I do is I let them work for 8 to 10 minutes and then I let them take this one home. And then I tell them if I see it again, if you bring it back finished, then I'll give you extra credit. And
Danielle,
so it's just
oh,
kind of,
I'm sorry. I mean to interrupt. But
yeah, go
quick
for it.
question. So they want to know what does your Marla asked, what does your center setup time look like? Do you use the same centers for multiple grade level classes?
In the beginning of the year, I do. I use the same centers for K1. And actually, two is kind of this thing where I kind of hybrid it from one and three, and then three, four, and oftentimes 4, 5. So when we get very specific, like fifth grade does 12 bar blues, then I have 12 bar blues centers. But some of these centers can be used for multiple grade levels with not a problem at all. So if you're looking at, you might have one group that's still exploring a concept and one that's practicing the same concept. Well, then you could pull a center that works for that. Another way to do it, if you want them just to get used to the idea of centers when you're first starting, is think about your standards and design a center that matches the standard. So you could say, I want a singing center, I want a listening center, I want a playing center. So you can go through and those become a little bit more universal in nature and a little bit less really focused on the concept. And there's nothing wrong with that either. If you're busy teaching music, you're busy teaching music. So please don't feel that the centers have to be really, really specific. Probably over time you'll develop some of those, and I do keep, even when I'm doing something really specific, like my instruments, the orchestra centers, I still sometimes I'll put my, melody makers in there, or sometimes I'll put something that's a little more like our desk bells. I'll put those in there, because instruments, the orchestra, I don't have a playing center for them. So sometimes, you can develop ones that will definitely work across grade levels, definitely work across, you know, developing different standards. So, you can have even my older kids, I don't really let them do puppets third grade and up. And they still ask for that. And so you could even develop some things as long as you're clear on what the ground rules are. And as long as they're busy singing or playing or reading or creating, then you're doing your work. I hope that makes sense and answered the question. Okay, so the next one, these are my last three center examples. Um, this one is so fun, and we just took black paper plates and put the note names on them, and black sticky Velcro on to make a floor staff on the carpet. You do want to make sure your staff is spaced according to your plates so that your note can fit in a space when they're building words. And then they pick from a batch of note cards that have A through G words on them, so dad or bead or whatever. And then they work together as a group to spell the word on the staff. I do have to make sure that they don't cluster their notes together and that it actually looks like something that is, you know, from note to note. And it's treble clef recall. Can we remember these notes? Can we help each other with it? I do include a poster of the notes at that station, and that's what that long rectangular white thing is on the floor. Is it's for them to look up. This one I do in 3rd and 4th grade. So, and you could even do it in 5th to review at the beginning of the year, treble clef notes. 5th, of course, is going to be doing bass clef, so it's easily switched. So use it for 3rd, 4th, 5th. If you are end of 2nd grade, we sometimes can do some, you know, basic recall of this sort. Um, just depends on your kids. So, example number 5. These one are the fortune tellers. These are so fun. Where you manipulate like that and you choose what you want. The first one on the top with the notes in the corners is kind of a more generic fortune teller or cootie catcher. And this one is has things like when you get to the middle section and you have to do something, it has things like sing Mary Had a Little Lamb with a different name and a different animal, or create an 8-beat dance move, or tell me your favorite instrument, or have you ever gone to see live music? What was it? That one is, as long as your kids are at a reading level where they can read what's going on. I've found end of 2nd grade they can do that one. Um, then that one's available. The one on the right is instruments of the orchestra again. So this one is a lot more specific. It's like, which instrument tunes the string section of the orchestra. And you might find that when you do that one, you might have to teach them what those answers are before they play the game, or they play the game and then they don't quite know and they ask the question. So just know that that one has a little more specific information. When we get to example number 6, oh, this was so fun. This was actually, I took an ORF class with a lady who was just masterful, and she had us build these single beat boxes. And we used Sharpies and we put our notes on the boxes. And then we use a big fluffy mallet. So we create a rhythm as a group. We use our big fluffy mallet, and everybody in the group gets to perform the rhythm before we create another rhythm. And that one they absolutely love. It's super fun. It's very time consuming to create those boxes, but once you have them create, and they do take up a lot of space. I will be the first to admit that. But they are so fun and the kids love them. And there's something about making something larger that just makes it less intimidating. And they have a really great time with that one. Okay.
Danielle, we have one more question.
Final.
Uh,
Yeah, go for it.
um, Question about setup time for your centers. How do you handle
Uh-huh.
the admin, that setup tear down aspect?
Setup tear down is interesting because also what if you're doing centers with one or two groups and then you have another two groups afterwards? I get giant baggies, and I buy them at the dollar store, and I'll put a center per bag, unless the instruments are out. If the instruments are out, I'll try to put them in a corner of my room where the other class is not going to really have access to it. So I do admit that setup can be hard, but it is worth it. I feel like it's worth it. And if you think ahead, like if you're like, so for my schedule, which I absolutely hate my schedule right now, I have 5th grade and then I have 2nd, kinder, and 1st all in a row. Well, what if I'm doing 5th grade centers? Or what if I need to do 2nd grade centers, but I need the space in my room? Then you just have to be creative on how you can go quickly with having the kids help you set it up. Like if it's got a floor staff or something like that, obviously teacher's going to want to have that set up ahead of time. But the card games and things like that, you can just put them in a bag and hand them the bag. I do allow myself about 10 minutes of directions before we go through our centers. And then we do our centers over 2 days. So we have 45-minute class periods. I'll do 10 minutes of directions, and then we'll get through three. Maybe if it's your first time doing centers, you might only get through two. And then the next day, we'll follow up with whatever we didn't finish.
Oh, great. Thank you. We're just about out of time, but I'll go ahead and show the last slide here. If you want to go over this last one real quickly, Danielle, that would be great.
Yeah, so I just want this to be encouraging and not be daunting. I want you to be gentle with the process, add in a few things that you think kids can use, realize where the kids are coming from developmentally and that these are things they need. And look at what the kids actually like to play with on their own, and then see if you could develop something that would kind of match their playing level. Find helpers to help you make the materials. My mother-in-law helps me cut things. I have a work basket all the time with things in various stages of development, and then start with one or two things and be gentle with yourself. Use the things that will match the concepts you teach the most often, and feel free to contact me if you have any burning questions or thoughts.